I'm Trevor Babb with the Contemporary Guitar Blog, and today we have a very special guest. The one and only Ben Verdery is joining me today. Benjamin Verdery is a genre-hopping classical guitarist who has recorded so many different recordings and has worked with a lot of very, very interesting people across the world of music. And today we are here to talk about one of two upcoming world premiere virtual video concerts that Ben is putting on called Peace, Love, and Guitars, which I can tell you is a very common sign off on Ben's emails. And he is here with me to talk about these very special events that are these fundraising events that are sponsored by the New York Classical Guitar Society and benefiting some very important organizations in our world. Thank you so much for joining me, Ben.
Thank you, Trev. It's an honor to be on your show. Congrats on this blog. This is great. I mean, on this podcast. Excuse me. Yeah, really great to be here on this. Of course, the audience doesn't know this, but it's like crazy blizzard out there.
Yes, it's a very snowy day.
Yeah, like nuts.
Nuts.
So that's why I have an Aloha shirt on, so to make me think that I'm in the tropics, but I'm really not. Yeah, but we.
All right.
Yeah.
So Ben, to start, just talk a little bit about the motivation behind putting this thing on, aside from the fact that I'm sure you, like all the rest of us, are really missing live music making. Talk a little bit more about the impetus for putting these events together.
Absolutely. So the COVID hits for all of us, and this is where you're seeing me as my practice room. It also has become a recording studio that we can talk about later. So COVID hits, and as we know, the world stops, and all performances are off, and etc. So I don't have to. And my first month of it, I was kind of didn't have a lot of motivation to practice. I just, and I must say, I was going at a really high pace. Right at that time, I was just come back from a trip where I was performing and was going to do more performing, and then I was going to go right into making a CD with a great quartet called the Ulysses Quartet. And that COVID actually forced me to slow down, all of us, right? I mean, just boom, stop. And so I would say for a good month and a half, I just kind of was, just not doing anything. I mean, started to teach remotely and learn all about that as we all did. But one thing that happened was somebody sent me this piece by Carulli, the great 19th century guitar composer who we all know and some of us love, some of us. So Carulli wrote 400 pieces for the guitar. That's all.
Right.
Plus, probably more. Anyway, so the piece was called L'Orage, or the Tempest, or it's called The Storm. And it's this programmatic piece. And again, two of my friends sent it to me. And I thought, well, that's kind of exciting. So I started reading it. And so it's a programmatic piece about a couple. They meet, they kiss, and all of this is in the music, kissing. And then then a storm comes, and the wind comes, and all this is like, again, labeled in the music. And I started to get so into this piece. It was like, and you know me, I mean, I don't play a lot of 19th century guitar music. In fact,
nor do I.
Yeah, right. That's what I say. So, but I'm like really into these simple, beautiful melodies. And that said, I really love hearing my colleagues play 19th century guitar music, and I love teaching it. I just don't play it. But now I'm sitting at home right in this room, and it's COVID, and it just touched me. Like I wasn't playing Bach, or I wasn't writing. And so I just want to mention that, is that like the power of music, the power of the guitar and being alone.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy wrote this piece, 200, 300 years ago, whatever. And I'm totally relating to it. And so as a storm comes, the couple, then a monster comes, and the guy has to fight the monster. So it was analogous to what was going on, not just with COVID, but with racial, all of our racial,
Oh, everything.
all
Yeah.
of our what we're going through racially and in this country. Um, it kind of looked like, wow, this piece means a lot to me, and that was the beginning
Hmm.
of me getting back into music. And then for the summer, Elliot Fisk, my dear brother, asked me to play in a Boston Guitar Fest, and I noticed that everybody was continuing. As you know, they were trying to figure out how to do festivals, etc. And in the Boston concert for Elliot, I recorded two pieces in a room like this, kind of live, straight up, no editing. And then I said, wait a minute, this is a virtual concert. I could add a video that they haven't seen. So I thought, okay, um, yeah, why don't I add that video? So in other words, I created this concert that was a combination of just playing quote new pieces in a room and videos. And then later in the summer, I went to film a video by Elizabeth, one of my friends, a wonderful composer, Elizabeth Brown, and her husband is this extraordinary visual artist. I just love. He's a photogravurist. He teaches at Bard, but he's genius.
Oh,
He's just
cool.
and they're a great couple. They've created, and we've always said we should do a video of this piece that Elizabeth wrote. This piece called Atlantis for slide, classical guitar, and theremin, and we had already
Yeah.
recorded it. So I thought, so we went and did this crazy video shot outdoors. You'll see, you've never seen, well, I've never seen a video like this. I mean, I'm literally, he has me playing underwater. It's so trippy and surreal.
Oh,
It's
that's so
it's
cool.
crazy, and but he's a great visual artist, and but I love Elizabeth's music. I say I've never heard a piece of hers I didn't love. So okay, so we do the video shoot, and then it just occurred to me, wait a minute, this COVID thing's going nowhere. Why don't you, with the basis of the Atlantis video, why don't you create a concert? um, where you talk to your buddies that you've recorded with, like Elizabeth pre-recorded, and figure out a way to make a video with pre-recorded pieces, and then it extended into recorded like new pieces. So I thought, well, yeah.
Yeah.
So I had just been staying at my dear friend, and you know him well, Jack V's,
Jack
a
V's.
great bassist, great Yale professor stuff, a great friend of mine, like a bro. And I'd written this, I had this idea because Jack has a million guitars, as you know. And I thought, what if I wrote a piece just using all of these guitars? And that led to a piece that I wrote for Jack. And I said, would you play on this? I'll write my part, and you write what you want to write, and we'll just kind of. But I'll write this. I'll write the form of the piece. I'll write my part, and you plug yours in. And if you want me to change something, of course, I'm willing to do that. I wasn't being like steadfast. This is my piece. It wasn't structured in that way. It was structured. I
Right.
knew exactly everything. So I based this piece on a Turkish mode. They call makams, and so I had, I don't know, something like 12 guitars, but all of them to one pitch with unisons, octaves, because some of his guitars are unplayable. So it's
Yeah.
not like, so I just kind of found, I said, okay, this is going to be a unison here. And it ended up, so I built a melody around this makam, and I based it on the very famous flamenco rhythm, most common of all, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12,
Yeah.
and
Solaris, right?
yeah, and well,
Yeah.
and others, yeah. And so,
Sure.
very good. And so that was the first piece of this co-writing. I said, wait a minute, this is, I've done co-writing before. What if I asked other people? So I asked Andy Summers, another brother from another
He
planet.
was he was in
Go
a
ahead.
band or something, right? They had a couple hits.
Wait a minute. Wait, did the band have something about protecting people?
The Police. Was that what they were
Oh,
called?
police.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Andy, that's just a story for all young musicians. Like if you had told me, I was a diehard Police fan, even stood in line in Hartford, Connecticut with my friends in the rain, scalping tickets. And then if you had told me, yeah, you're going to be like, best friends with this guy, the guitar player, in a few years, I would say, come on. I mean, that's the great thing about music, is
Yeah.
you just don't know who you're going to meet. You don't know where it's going to take you.
Right.
And Andy and I had already made a record together, and Julian Bream had just passed away. And I said, hey,
Right.
man, I'm going to write this tribute to why don't we do a tribute? Oh, fantastic, which of course he doesn't sound like that at all. And so again, I wrote the piece, I wrote the skeleton of it, and I wrote my part and I recorded my part and sent it to him. And I also took a video of myself playing it. And he wrote, and because Julian really liked Django Reinhardt. I mean, he could improvise and was a great
Yeah.
admirer of Django Reinhardt. So I wanted something of Django in there. And I actually took a Gaspar Sans piece and a Reinhardt piece and kind of used them as inspirations. It was a Passacaglia of Gaspar Sans, and I kind of, I used a little bit of that line, and then there was a piece of Django's that I kind of simplified the harmonies a bit. And the thing about writing for Andy or any of these people, you want to inspire them, right? So it's not the same as writing a piece for someone where you present them with your final piece. They've asked you to write a piece.
Right. Like, these are my instructions, right?
Yeah,
like,
yeah, exactly.
Do them.
Exactly. This is not the case. I mean, that's a good conversation to have anyway, writing music for other people, because I just was working yesterday with my dear friend, brother David Leisner, who's playing a piece of mine. And we were talking about this yesterday about, he had some real, seriously, real convictions about editing some of the music, and saying, I really want this down an octave. And we had this whole discussion about me liking this, whatever it was, 4 beats or 2 down an octave. And, oh no, I think it sings much better. And, and I'm mentioning that because I was saying, David, like I'm just not that, so far, I'm not that kind of composer. I want the input of the player. And, Philip, I want the input of the player. I want them to be inspired. And so when I'm writing for Andy, I've already made a record with him. I know this guy really well.
Yeah.
And they're playing. So on one hand, I'm writing to I say, oh, there's a clear section that, you just know he's going to solo, right? So, well, this is his solo. This other section, he'll do whatever he wants to do, but it's less solo. It's a less of a passage where he would take his solo. And that said, you want him to be inspired. You got to challenge. I know, you want to challenge them just enough, but you also don't want to write something that's like, hey, dude, I don't have time to do this. This is so it's like, it was an interesting, and same with Jack. Jack and I had more back and forth. Like, he would send me, what do you think of this? Because he was writing within the mode of the makam, within the Turkish mode. I said, you could use these notes, but let's not. And I tuned the second section of the piece is also, the guitars is again in a scordatura, especially, that complements it, as well as the last part of Jack's piece. I'm playing zither on an electric 12-string Rickenbacker, and then right next to that is electric baritone. I'm sure you've seen that baritone.
Oh yeah,
I've
seen both those instruments.
Yeah, they were all tuned differently, and but all to complement. And so Jack had to play within those modes. So he would throw things back and forth. What do you think of this? And I would yeah, that's great. I like what you. But so here we were making music during COVID, right?
Yeah.
Here we were, like, okay, it wasn't perfect. It wasn't together, but we were creating. And same, Andy was pretty much one go. I mean, I said, look, you could do this. He's, all right, don't worry, I've got it. It's like, and he sends it back, and I was blown up.
Nice.
And Gigi, same thing. Gigi and I, a little bit more back and forth. She sent me her part. I said, oh, maybe try this here, but that's great. Because I don't want to tell them what to do. But if they ask me, I'll say, this is great, but there's no rules. I kept saying to Gigi, you write whatever you want. This isn't like, nobody's heard this piece. We'll just see if you think it sounds great, if we think it works. And then the videos were done the same way, just sort of, I'll film me, you film you. And in the case of, Andy, he filmed himself syncing, but it's really hard to sync to a solo. if you've improvised, my part for Andy was written. I sat there and I actually, you can see I'm reading.
Mm-hmm.
But for Andy, so we had a challenge of, what do we do here? Because he would have had to work. I mean, look, this whole process of videos in the Karuli, which is the last piece, which I, recorded, but I had to practice 2.5 weeks. I mean, just to sync, just to learn how to play exactly the retards. I mean, that's a whole nother endeavor. So making these videos is actually, 3 or 4 parts. The first part is you learn it. The second part is you record it. Now, in the first video and the second video with Bill Coulter, we did an Eddie Vedder tune, and we had already recorded it. That was one of the first guys that, hey man, we love that song. Let's do a video. I'll be on a beach. You're on a beach. There's a
Yeah.
whole story about that. But
Okay.
you still have to. So we already recorded. That was good. Now we have to learn the piece. Couldn't remember. I'm not saying it was that difficult, but it still takes time. You really want to know the moves so people can see that you're really playing. And I am really playing. Every video that I'm playing, I'm really playing. Okay, it's not live, but I'm playing exactly, you know, what I'm doing and full on. Otherwise, it doesn't come across. So with Andy, that's tough. I mean,
Yeah.
he would have had to practice for. So we go like, what do we do? And he says, oh, I don't know, do slow mo. So yeah, so we have one passage where he's just like, and it's groovy. I'm next to him, but all that was done with. I'm just very lucky to have a daughter that she does most all of my videos and does all the
Right.
editing. So I'm really lucky, to have her. She's done most of the work. But in the case of Gigi and my friend Craig Payton, who I made 3 New Age records with back in the day when you weren't even a
Oh yeah,
thought
that
maybe
was a
yet.
while ago, right?
And he did the whole video, and Lotar, the Atlantis. So
Right.
so that's kind of how we've been working. In the case of Simon, we had already recorded the
Mhm.
piece "What He Said" on my last CD, "Scenes from Ellis Island," and I always wanted to do a video of it, but that was a lot of work. We both had to learn the parts again and sit there and play together. And there are tons of takes, where you can't, even though we're reading, it's like the other thing is how do you get the sound loud enough? So we're out. We decided because of COVID to say, okay, well, let's put ourselves out on your rooftop.
Yeah.
Very Beatle. So we're out on the rooftop, but we couldn't get the sound loud. I mean, so he's got a little speaker behind him, and you have to know it well enough so that even though it's like you can still follow it. So these are the inside stuff of doing
Yeah.
these things. But in the end, with some editing, you do a far away take, you do a close one. It worked. My
Great.
daughter had to do a lot of magic tricks. So that's a long answer to your question, but that gives you sort of an idea of it. Kind of grew. I mean, at first it was going to be this little thing, and then I kept asking people, and my wife said, why are this? So of course I asked my wife,
Yeah.
because that's so, and our the great friend brother Sergio Assad wrote us a fantastic. So the next concert, none of the
Right.
videos are done and none of the music is recorded, and I have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, I bet.
But it's been super exciting and super. I mean, the real thing was to get back to the original question. Look, I'm tail end of my career. For me, the canceled concerts, they were a drag, but nothing like for Gigi or for the string quartet or for young players like
Yeah.
yourself. I'm lucky, man. I got a job I can do remotely, and it just felt like, okay, what could I do in my little way to make a difference? And I thought, well, you got all these friends, who have means to make videos. Let's try this. And we'll, if we can raise, because as I mean, when I go outside here, the homeless thing is way elevated, way more people in the street. Never mind these food banks that you see on, it's just brutal. And then
Mhm.
so it seemed like a natural for the charities to be homelessness, the food banks, and the artists, and not just guitar guitar players, but stagehands,
Yeah. It's a whole industry.
everybody, exactly, a whole industry. It's like, all right, so I figure like I'm not gonna charge money for this, but you're not gonna have to donate, but $5 is better than nothing.
Yeah.
So if you're lucky like me, so that's, and all my friends said yes in a heartbeat. They all said, I'm in. So that's the kind of the story. Sorry to go on and on and on, but
That's fine. It's fun to listen to you go on and on and on. Let me ask you this
yeah,
about
yeah,
syncing to these videos.
yes,
Um,
it's my
you
question.
mentioned that's a really hard thing to do. You've got all this practice that you have to do to play with the video in a way that, um, you know, looks right on the video. because the audio is all pre-recorded.
Right.
So what do you think that does to your interpretation down the road? Do you foresee these pieces being, especially like the Caruli, which is like a composed piece that you're playing solo, like how elastic is your interpretation of that piece going to be in a year, in 2 years, in 5 years? Like, what is that going to look like for that piece? Do you feel like you're going to maybe be housed in by the work that you did to sync with this video, or do you think that you'll be breaking out of that?
Well, great question. Really good, as only you would ask. Well, interestingly, with the Caruli, I never played it live. Like what I'm going to do for the next concert is a series of 3 Bach pieces that I've played a lot. So that was interesting to record something that usually we play it live a few times at least, right? And that's not going to be the case for this next concert with any of the music, because the next concert is much more through composed music. There's no co-written music. Um, so well, I don't think it will. If anything, I think it will be advantageous because having had to practice so much with a recording, I know very much what I did. And so, as Arthur Rubinstein said, you take chances on firm ground. You.
Mm,
I feel like, okay, I know this well. I know I did that move there, but no, so I don't think it will inhibit me. Would it benefit me? Will it have probably to some degree just for memory? Having to play along. I mean, I think it's great. One thing I do, and I tell my students to do it when you know a piece really well, play along with somebody else. If you
mm,
really admire their playing, like let's take any Baroque piece, like the Chaconne or something. I played along with a Baroque violinist that I love named Amadine Byers, and
hmm.
I would just
I'll have
play
to check
along with her,
her out.
even though it's out of she's even in a different key. I mean, I tune the guitar sometimes, but
Oh, wow.
just to learn her rubato and say, oh, that's how she did it. I mean, you have to know the piece really well, but it's a kind of a master class. It's kind of like, okay, I'm going to do exactly what they do. You do phrase by phrase. Just sit down and play phrase by phrase. Okay, dum G. Oh, great. Oh, etc. And it's so enlightening. Now I'm doing it with Schubert songs for the next one, going with the great Gerald Moore, one of the greatest accompanists, Fischer Dieskau's accompanists in
Mm-hmm.
millions, and just listening to his moves. Just okay, of course, listening to the singer. Don't get me wrong, but just getting a sense of the piece. So I don't. That's kind of going off, but your point. But no, I won't. I don't feel I'll be locked in because I did all of that work for the video. I think I'll know it better.
Yeah, and it sounds like you're kind of like putting your playing under a microscope and learning things about your playing that you may not have even been aware of.
Oh my
And
God,
just you're
say it.
picking your interpretation apart, like down to like the cellular level, and just exposing all these idiosyncrasies that you may not have been aware of, and um hyper analyzing everything you're doing.
Totally, totally. It's interesting with COVID that my students have had to make videos for the way the format we do is they send a video of the piece they're working on, and I tell them, look, it's not a performance, just play it as well as you can, and then I listen to it with them, and then we go back to Zoom and we go through it, and they have their guitars, and they've all said that the pressure of just making, even though I say, look, it's not a performance, you can quote make mistakes, they have this pressure because they are recording themselves, and they do have a lot of integrity. They want it to be great, and I really have to say, I would say all of them, their playing improved a lot more in the semester. I have to say,
That's
just
great.
just because of that thing, and what you say about me listening to the Caruli. Oh my God, I found this and that, and because when I make recordings, like I don't know about how you are, but I don't want to know for them when they're done. It's like people have said that. I'm sure you've had that thing where you go somewhere and say, "Let me play your recording." No, 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 no. Don't play my anybody's, but don't play my recordings. So I don't know if you're like that, but
Oh
for
no,
me,
absolutely.
right? You just
You're
like,
listening for the mix, you're listening for the timing
oh,
between tracks, trying to
shoot
make
me.
sure that
Yeah,
the
exactly.
mastering is
Yeah.
perfect, and the recording I released 3 years ago, I want nothing to do with it anymore because, I listened to it probably 500 times trying to figure out, "Okay, I want these edits. Oh, this, that, and the other thing." It's
Exactly.
it's insane how much of and I've heard other people say this, like, once it's done, like, there's so much other music to listen to out there, and,
It's a
like
mild form. I don't want anybody to feel sorry for us, but it's a mild form of torture. It's like we got into it, we agreed to it,
oh, yeah, we
but
made our bed.
I mean, I will tell you the one cool thing that I know that you can appreciate, but you will appreciate it when you're in my age. Like my wife just found a radio interview that we did in 1978 or something of us playing Caruli, actually a flute and guitar piece. But Caruli, I played a piece by Anthony Newman. We did Bach. And anyway, what we were playing at the time, and it was like time traveling. And when I go back or happen to hear something I recorded when I was your age, you are really glad. We were talking about the Yale DMA. You really are glad that you pushed yourself. Like I see that you're doing records all the time, and I so admire that. I mean, it's not easy to do. It costs money. Like
Absolutely.
you and I have talked about this before. It's like not. I mean, I never made money from records, but at least you could sell them at concerts, etc.
Yeah,
So all of it, and yet it's part of who we are as artists. We feel the need. I don't think it's egotistical. I think it's just in us that we feel the need to at least frame it, to at least make this statement, so you can say, well, yeah, me, Trevor Babb, at this time I was this multiple guitar record where I recorded these things
yeah,
and I worked with these composers. And you'll see when you get to be older, you really, it feels wonderful. And not that you're praising it, just it's who you are. You were able. I mean, I think that's
yeah,
the miracle of maybe the last 100 years of recording. But getting
sure.
back to the original point, I never recorded myself in college. I could have. And that's one thing that I've learned through COVID is like, man, you really missed out. You could have been with your cassette recorders recording yourself and improving, because there's no question that we make, it's just painful to do. We make such more progress, I think, when we attentively listen back. It has to be attentively. I mean, of course, we listen. I mean, I don't know about you, but I've listened to recordings that I've made, and I don't hear obvious mistakes. Somebody else will say, and that's the thing about a producer, right? I mean,
Hmm.
because of COVID, I've really had to do. I did one recording right here. Now I call it Studio B, and you're welcome if you need studio time. But come by, because we also have exercise bikes, so it's an incredible studio. You can record right here. I didn't put up this. I have this little screen, and who knew? I mean, here I am in Amsterdam Avenue, and the recording for Gigi is done right here. Friend of mine lent me two mics, and I am so not that guy. You know
Hmm.
that I am not remotely technically. It just makes you weep. But I didn't do the editing. I sent the editing out to my friend Damien Kelly, great guitarist, and he records, but he's a great guitarist. And just doing that was so interesting, because you realize, well, what's the advantage of a producer? Well, they hear if this chair squeaks, hopefully, right?
Hmm.
Hopefully, or if you breathe too loudly, which
Right.
I'm like, you know, crazy heavy. So, but COVID taught me, well, you're gonna record yourself, dude. That's it.
Yeah.
You got no choice, and you're gonna figure this out. And I was thinking back in my college days, wow, I should have. So that I really should have been doing. So I see my students really becoming way more proficient, and that's not a big issue for them now. And I think COVID has accelerated that, made them make
Oh
videos.
yeah. I read
So
something that in 2020, like microphone scales just skyrocketed.
of course.
Because everybody was like, I need to like do something. Every musician was like, I gotta get into recording because nobody else is going to see me otherwise. Everybody's live streaming, everybody's, doing pre-recorded stuff. We have to bring the music to people because we can't bring ourselves to people right now. And so
Exactly.
it's just, I think, created, we've had to adapt, and that's what we're hearing from everybody that I'm
Everybody,
talking
right?
to right now, is just, and that's the one thing, despite all the tragedy and all the canceled concerts and all of the, everything that this has brought on, it's also just revealed how resilient we are. And so,
Absolutely,
yeah.
beautifully put. Yeah. How
So,
resilient. Yeah.
let's talk a bit about virtual chamber music. Um, and it sounds like most of this material was already recorded pre-COVID, right?
Well, that was the intent, but then it turned out not to be so
Right.
because let's say Jack, the three, so three, I guess three, yeah. Everything else, four were not. Next concert, all of them are none of them are
Mhm.
pre-recorded.
Yeah.
Um, so it meant okay. So Craig Payton, who's my old time buddy, he created a track, sent me the track. What can you do on it? I wrote my guitar parts, blah blah blah. And he said he's a pilot. He says I've got this is back in late September. I've got a I got a hangar. It's a nice day. You come, you'll play. I'll set up the mics, and so you literally see me playing in an airplane hangar. It's
That's
my
amazing.
first recording in an air. I mean, granted, I'm plugged in. I don't think we did anything acoustic, even though we had mics there. He might have used some blending. Um, so that was kind of live, you know. I played electric, classic, and steel string, which was fun. The other recordings, the co-written ones, those were done. Um, Gigi and Andy definitely click track,
Mhm.
right? So, and you think that that's going to be paralyzing and confining, and to a degree it is, but I think it's worked out okay. Like
Yeah.
Gigi, I played with a click. Gigi recorded hers without. Um, we'll see. And you know, she was upset because she says, "Well, your sound is so much different than my sound." And I said, it doesn't matter. This is what we have, right? This
Right.
is sort of what you're saying about, you know, just being resilient and said, look, okay, so like it's no, right. It's not perfect recording. Your mic is different than my mic. That's okay. It's going to work. We'll figure it out in the mix and people, it's also a visual. She's doing all the, editing of the film and she
Oh,
filmed me.
wow.
She said that, you know, her boyfriend Gooley, who you know
Mhm.
is at Princeton getting his doctorate, and so she said, come out to Princeton and I'll film you in the middle of a field. I said, great. It was freezing, you know, but I asked my guitar maker Gary Lee, how long can I be outside, you know, because I
Wow.
really wanted to use his guitar because I use the highest. I have 24 frets on mine, and so I use the highest fret. Anyway, so the answer to your question is like the making of chamber music has been click track related. Jack was no problem. um I didn't really do a click track, and I think the nature of the piece with Jack wasn't. But with Andy said you have to have a click. I have to know exactly where you are,
Mhm.
and but different tempi. So I was amazed that I could move both in Gigi and Andy. I could move, you know, 10 metronome markings higher without an accelerando and have it sound pretty great. You know, I mean, would it be ultimately what I would do for a quote, you know, CD? I don't know, but you know, so what I've learned is to be way more easy on myself, you know, and say, hey man, what I said to Gigi, it's like this is what it is. Sorry, I'm recording home. It's a, you know, as long as it meets a certain standard. So that's what, you know, I think it's okay. I think, but I've learned to just be easier on myself, and also with my students, just emotionally, just saying, hey, if you can't, you know, this is a strenuous time. I still say, I mean, in my case, I still feel I can't complain about anything. You know, I've been in good health.
Mhm.
Um, but I think for a young person who's going to college who is not having that experience that you had, I mean, look at you. What you're doing is miraculous with your children and with your wife. It's like, whoa. I mean, we were talking about it earlier. So I think emotionally we have to be really easy on yourself and just be aware that everybody is in a lot of pain and a lot of struggle. It's like everybody's trying to figure this out. But I think if you play an instrument on any level, like you said, that the cost of the microphone sales have gone up. Apparently, my friend Jim D'Addario says, guitar strings are doing well. Guitar sales are up. Who knew?
Hmm.
People are buying guitars because they want to sit around and just plunk away because it's a great thing.
Yeah.
Before all of this, before the internet, everybody had a piano in their house or everybody had an
Right.
instrument. And so we're learning the power of an instrument, the power emotional. Just to play a chord is very satisfying. So anyway, there's a lot of other things that we've had to be solid. It's a very good. COVID's been a very good test of your relationship. you know, like,
Yeah.
you know, I had a student. I just want to tell you a story at Yale. He lived in a studio apartment with his girlfriend. He still does. They're still together
Amazing.
for up until right now, and he was practicing all day. And she's not a musician.
Okay.
And so the first thing we talked about was like, dude, you have to discuss with her when you can practice. You have to learn how to practice in the bathroom. You have to learn how to not practice when she wants. Otherwise, you're not going to have a girlfriend. It's like
Yeah.
so it worked out. But anyway,
Yeah,
I
we've
went
had
off.
to repurpose whole corners of our house. It's just, but that's what we have to do. You have to adapt.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about this piece with the theremin that you were talking about earlier. I'm especially interested to hear about doing chamber music with a theremin. I don't think I've ever heard of anybody else doing this in classical music. What is it like to make chamber music with someone who doesn't actually touch their instrument, who doesn't have like any sense of attack just because of the nature of the instrument? It's just like, and well, there's the beginning of the sound. What's challenging about making music with a thereminist, if that's what they're called? And what is so exciting about working with that instrument?
Man, great questions. Got to yeah, got to do more interviews. I got to hire you to do interviews. First, I have to say it's not so much the theremin, but I was working with one of the most brilliant musicians I know, which is who is Elizabeth Brown. So I'd be interesting to work with another thereminist, but with Elizabeth, she has perfect pitch and she's super sweet, but she's one of those composers and she really knows what she wants, right? She's not, I wouldn't say that she's, unbending, but, and if you're not, perfect pitch is a curse. So if you're not, so that's part of why she's so beautifully in tune. And but the piece was written in such a way, maybe she looked at me more than I looked at her. Maybe she just knew because we recorded it so long ago, and I'm trying to think of the rehearsals to answer your question more precisely. But suffice to say, I think the piece was written in a manner that my attack she'd be right with, and maybe it was the fact that it is all slide guitar, and that she purposely wanted me to never be stationary with my left hand. I can remember the rehearsal saying, "No, no, 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 you got to move all the time." She would watch me play. I don't have I demonstrated in the you'll see I have an interview in the concert, to introduce each piece, and I pull out the guitar, and that piece is kind of cool because it's the story of Atlantis, and she based it on the idea of, well, what if we found a little corner of manuscript paper that had, from Villa-Lobos, say, which it is. So she uses the Villa-Lobos Etude 1 as the accompaniment, as the ostinato in a D minor, open D minor tuning, and she also quotes Etude 5, which is dee da dee da 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 dee da dee da. It's really great. But again, in terms of precision and attack, I was always moving, and maybe that she was very conscious of that. Well, look, I mean, nothing gets by her. I'm sure she did think of that. That's a great question for her, really. But I don't remember any challenges of not getting together. I remember just um, more how she wanted things to be phrased, and how quickly I would do a glissando, if the slide going from to and fro from the fifth to the sixth, and then doing back, and back of the back of the slide, of course, giving you a different pitch center. So but again, I think it was mostly this business of left hand, of keeping it always like you're wavy and underwater, literally. And the video is so surreal because you're always submerged. I mean, it's almost always. And he built a sort of a Lotar built a kind of a fake theremin, so you'll see her playing this thing that kind of looks like a theremin. And then he built a fake guitar with these string. One of the strings is a rope, a little piece of rope. Oh, it's hilarious, man. But anyway, I don't know if that answers your question, but that's, I hope so.
Yeah, I think it does. And it sounds like she was conscious of the challenges in writing so that they weren't too challenging, which
Yeah,
is what a good composer does, right?
right.
So
I
let's
mean,
just
yeah, go
go
ahead.
ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
No, I will say it's one of my favorite pieces, duos I've ever played. It's kind of a mini just song, it's an ABA form, but you'll see. And it's funny because I'm so used to it. And my friend John, Olson of the Guitar Society, said you should talk a little bit about theremin, because not everybody, for him, it sounds kind of eerie. One thing I
Mhm.
didn't say, which is the obvious, which is, it's the Beach Boys, Good Vibrations, right?
Mm.
That's where I first heard of theremin. But I don't think of it as eerie. And he said, oh, it's kind of eerie. Um, what's remarkable to me is just how she could be so precise with her pitch.
Mhm.
She's just, it's so, and we've done it live 2 or 3 times, and it's remarkable. And then so she says, sure, come up and try to play it. And like I said in the interviews, it's like, I got this, come on. And you're like, woo, it's like, and you think, okay, there's a reason why,
Yeah,
people
it's
get
it's a
hired to
true
play the
art.
theremin. Yeah, yeah.
I
It's like,
can't wait
it's
to
an
hear it.
instrument.
I think you
Yeah.
premiered the piece when I was living in Switzerland, and I couldn't stay up until 4 in the morning to catch it
Oh,
on the
really?
program when it was on the live stream. So I'm really, really
That's
curious to
so
hear it.
funny. Yeah, it's on her record. It's on Spotify. You can go
Oh,
hear it on
okay.
a record called Mirage. So
Okay.
that much you can hear. I'd love to do it again. I'm hoping, to get her to write more music. She really is one of my favorite composers. I mean, she'll send me a piece, and I said, "Look, it's just boring. I'm gonna say what I always say. I love the piece. I mean, of course, I'll make comments about it. She just lives in a very particular sound world. We all do, but her sound world is she loves, kind of like Jack V's, like loves like Harry Parch instruments, loves,
Mm,
she'll, like, for example, when she writes for guitar, of course she's going to write slide, and of course she's going to use it in a different manner, and it's never uh you know gratuitous. It's always very musical. It's always like
cool.
not an effect. It just really works. So anyway,
Neat.
it
Well,
just seemed like
so I'm
reliable.
cheating and I'm looking
Yeah.
at your website now, but those 3 charities for people who are really interested are World Central Kitchen, which we mentioned earlier,
Right.
Americans for the Arts,
Americans
and
for the Arts.
Volunteers of America, who
That's what I meant. I
must
said
be
American. Yeah.
the
Yeah.
homeless
That's the
organization.
homeless. Yeah.
So it's a great thing that you're doing, Ben. That
Well, not just me. I mean, everybody's.
everybody, yeah,
Yeah,
but
really should be
you're the ringleader here.
the
So
ringleader.
this is Peace, Love, and Guitars, which will be debuting. It'll be on, is it a YouTube stream
Yeah, it's a
or
YouTube stream. You
okay.
just have to sign up. You just have to register. That's all.
Register on
And then,
Benjamin
uh,
Verdery's website,
or
benjaminverdery.com,
the New York Guitar Society,
New York Guitar
New York
Society,
City, New York
New
City.
York
I always
City
forget the
Guitar
city. Yeah, I
Society,
always forget the
February
city.
12th at
And
8 p.m. Eastern,
April
uh,
23rd.
and April 23rd for the second. iteration.
Yeah.
Ben, thanks so much
Thanks,
for
Trevor.
taking the time to talk to me today.
So appreciate it, and good luck with the podcast. Good luck, everybody out there. As the great saying goes, the Hebrew saying, "This too shall pass." So just hang in, hang in.
And we will. Thanks so much, Ben.
Indeed. All right, man. Ciao.